Good afternoon and welcome to the City Club of Cleveland. I'm Dan Walsh of Huntington Bank and a proud partner of the City Club Business Leader Series. It's my pleasure today to introduce today's speaker, Consul General of Japan of Detroit, Dr. Kazuyuki Katayama. On a personal note, I had the honor of becoming friends with Dr. Katayama through an introduction from my good friend and wildly successful Cleveland entrepreneur, Hiro Fujita. Hiro invited my wife Molly, who's also a City Club board member, to have dinner in Detroit with the Consulate General's home in August. As luck would have it, we drove in the largest rainstorm in Detroit's the last 140 years. It flooded our car and stranded Molly and me. As a true ambassador and friend would, Dr. Katayama rescued us and took us into his home. We will always appreciate his friendship and his generosity. Luckily, Mother Nature has been more nice to you today on your journey here. In addition to rescuing wayward travelers, let's talk about Dr. Katayama's role here in the U.S. Over the last decade, when we think of media narratives about economic growth in Asia, it is often China that dominates the coverage. But Japan, not China, is the largest foreign investor in Ohio, accounting for 28% of foreign investment. Ohio has a long history with Japan going back decades. One of the most significant moments may have been back in 1977 when a group of trade leaders and political leaders announced a $35 million investment in Marysville, Ohio to open a Honda plant. That was the beginning of the Honda story, which grew and grew, and the full story includes 10 million Honda Accords manufactured in Ohio and 14,000 full-time jobs across the state. Additionally, according to the latest survey, there are 425 Japanese affiliated companies in Ohio responsible for creating more than 67,000 jobs. As Ohio's economy continues to grow, attracting foreign dollars to create jobs is a priority for businesses, government officials, and policymakers alike. Dr. Katayama is here today to discuss how we can maintain that positive momentum. Dr. Katayama joined the Consulate General in Japan at Detroit on September 20th, 2013. The office was established in 1993 by the government of Japan to serve the states of Michigan and Ohio. Within these states, the office has two major responsibilities: to protect the interests of the Japanese citizens and to strengthen the Japan-U.S. alliance through furthering relations with local governments, companies, educational institutions, cultural organizations, and the general public. Dr. Katayama began his career in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in Japan in 1983. Within the ministry, he has served as Director of Energy Resources Division of the Economic Affairs Bureau and as Director of the Cultural Affairs Division of the Public Diplomacy Department. Overseas, Dr. Katayama has held posts in the Japanese embassies in China, the United States, Malaysia, and Belgium. He received his Master's of Arts degree from Harvard and his Ph.D. from the University of Malaysia. Ladies and gentlemen, members and friends of the City Club, it is my privilege to introduce to you today's speaker, Dr. Kazuyuki Katayama.
Thank you, Dan, for that kind introduction, and warm welcome. And last time you missed the excellent Japanese food at my residence, so you should come back. And I'm honored to speak before the City Club of Cleveland. Your club's founding in 1912, and its mission as a citadel of free speech is most impressive. And I am humbled to think of the speakers who have addressed this prestigious forum before me. And I heard that the first US president ever invited to address the club was Theodore Roosevelt. And he was a mediator in the ending of the Russo-Japanese War in 1904 or 05. So the City Club does indeed have some connections to Japan. And I'm most grateful to CEO Dan Moslop and Mr. Albert Ratner for their kind invitation, and would also like to pay special thanks to Cleveland's own Dr. Hiroyuki Fujita, who introduced me to this wonderful club. I also thank Huntington Bank and other companies for their generous sponsorship. Today marks my 10th visit to Cleveland and also 45th visit to Ohio since assuming duties as the Consul General in September last year. And my jurisdiction consists of two states, Ohio, of course, And the place I've learned is sometimes called the state up north. And Cleveland is actually the only city in either state that I had visited prior to becoming Consul General. Being a baseball and art fan, I came to see an Indians game and the Cleveland Museum of Art back in 2001 when I worked at the embassy in Washington, D.C. And speaking of the Cleveland Museum, just this year, over 50 masterpieces of modern Japanese art from Tokyo National Museum were exhibited there. And it was the first time that these treasures had been loaned anywhere overseas. And in this location, the Tokyo National Museum exhibited masterpieces from the Cleveland Museum of Art, including its exquisite Japanese collection. And Japanese audiences are also well acquainted with the prestigious Cleveland Orchestra. And their orchestra has famously played with world-renowned Japanese pianist Mitsuko Uchida. And their collaboration has earned wonderful reviews. And backstage after the April concert here, Mrs. Uchida told me that your orchestra is one of the finest in the world. And she raved about her chemistry with its players. And Cleveland is beloved by Japanese people for other reasons. For starters, LeBron James and Rock and Roll Hall of Fame are huge attractions, and regardless of what country you are from. And you also happen to be located in a state whose name always gives us Japanese good feeling, you know that. The word Ohio, you see, means good morning in the Japanese language, Ohio. And Ohio is also where the Dr. Edwin O. Reischauer, perhaps the most famous US scholar on Japan, once studied. And he was born in Tokyo as a missionary's son and graduated from Oberlin College before attending and teaching at Harvard, and eventually became the US ambassador to Tokyo in the Kennedy and Johnson administration. And Ohio is also well known in Japan for its decisive role in presidential elections. And the Japanese media has closely covered the swings of this state over the years. And Japan's political junkies stay glued to the TV to see how you will all vote. And even in Japan, it's a well-known maxim that as Ohio goes, so goes the presidency. And of course, we will all closely follow the 2016 GOP convention, which will have Cleveland and Ohio in the spotlight again. Now, before discussing Ohio-Japan relations, I think it's important to assess the US-Japan alliance overall. As you may know, this past April, President Obama made an important state visit to Japan. And upon his evening arrival, the president met Prime Minister Shinzo Abe at a Tokyo restaurant named Sukiyabashi Jiro to enjoy some of the world's best sushi. And despite its tiny size and not even having its own restrooms in the restaurant, this sushi bar has a prestigious Michelin 3-star rating. And I guess Japanese cuisine has grown so popular, and it's now a tool for diplomacy. The meal was an informal kickoff to several substantial meetings. As a result, the leaders could affirm our nation's excellent relationship, which is one of the longest running and closest in the world. And it is a relationship built on 3 strong pillars: security, economy, and the people-to-people exchange. Our alliance works because the US and Japan share mutual trust, a common vision of rules-based international order and a commitment to uphold democratic values. And we promote open markets. And we value human rights, freedom, and civil liberties. And we encourage people-to-people exchange at all levels of society. First, security. The US-Japan Security Alliance is the cornerstone of Japan's survival, as well as for regional peace and security. Toward this goal, the US pivot or rebalance in Asia-Pacific and Japan's policy of proactive contribution to peace are important developments. And President Obama and Prime Minister Abe have condemned Russia's illegal annexation of Crimea and expressed support for Ukraine's sovereignty and territorial integrity. And our leaders continue to work closely in addressing the Iranian nuclear issue and Afghan reconstruction, instability in Syria, and in other Middle East hotspots. We share a mutual interest in building a constructive relationship with China, as its peaceful rise provides tremendous opportunities, not only for China itself, but also for the rest of the world, including US and Japan. At the same time, however, we share strong concerns over actions that have raised tensions in the East China Sea and South China Sea. The US has reaffirmed its commitment under the US-Japan Security Treaty, which extends to all territories under the administration of Japan, including the Senkaku Islands. Japan and China are neighbors who you cannot escape each other. So the Japan would like to enhance a mutually beneficial relationship based on common strategic interests. In that sense, we welcome the Prime Minister Shinzo Abe and President Xi Jinping held their first official meetings in Beijing last month since their appointment two years ago. And regular communication between the two governments, especially between the leaders, is essential to avoid miscalculations and misunderstandings of the other's intention. And President Obama has also welcomed Japan's July 1st cabinet decisions regarding the revision of the interpretation of the Japanese constitution on the right of so-called collective self-defense. And our close cooperation is essential in managing and responding to long-standing and emerging threats, as well as opportunities in Asia and around the world. And Japan enjoys closer ties with the US than with any other nation on earth or in our history. So we are very proud that such excellent bilateral relationship had been achieved in the 70 years following the end of World War II. And I have studied and worked numerous times in China, US, and I have also served in Brussels, the capital of Europe, where the EU and NATO headquarters are situated, and also served in the rapidly emerging Southeast Asian region. And from my over 30 years experience as a career diplomat in these places, I'm convinced more than ever of the critical role that the United States plays in Japan's prospect for peace and prosperity. Then the second pillar of the US-Japan alliance is our economic ties. The US remains the second largest trading partner for Japan, only after China, and Japan is the fourth biggest trading partner for the United States, after Canada, China, and Mexico. And US exports to Japan have been increasing, and in 2013, 77.2 billion US dollars in manufacturing and agricultural goods alone were exported from the United States to Japan. On the other hand, Surpassing China again in 2013, the United States has become the largest importer of Japanese goods. While these figures are eye-opening, U.S. economic relations with Japan add up to a lot more than exports. A huge piece of our economic interdependence is based on Japan's direct investment in the United States and resulting job creation. America is among Japan's top destinations for foreign direct investment, and in 2012, the cumulative FDI in the United States by Japanese companies amounted to $309.4 billion US dollars. And each state in the United States has workers employed and supported by Japanese companies. Of the 5.3 million jobs created by the US affiliates of foreign companies in 2010, 12%, that is 636,000, was provided by Japanese investment. And this is a larger share than from all other countries' companies, including Germany, 570,000, and Canada, 540,000. And furthermore, Japanese companies in the United States exported $51.8 billion in goods, or 23% of all exports from the United States by foreign companies. And of course, there are key factors that attract Japanese investment to the US. These include America's open, free, and huge market, its highly skilled workers, abundant raw materials, and low energy costs. And together, our nations account for 30% of the world GDP. And the United States and Japan, which are the number 1 and number 3 economies in the world, should take the lead to create a new global standard and rules to govern the economy in the Asia-Pacific region. We are now working together in several economic fora to liberalize trade and boost economic growth. And to this end, an impossible win-win result, the US, Japan, and 10 other Pacific countries are now negotiating the ambitious Trans-Pacific Partnership known as the TPP. The TPP holds much promise for even greater trade and investment with Japan. And considering the Great Lakes states' automotive, energy, medical, agricultural, financial, and insurance sectors, Northeast Ohio stands to benefit. And President Obama and Prime Minister Abe identified the path forward on important issues, injecting new momentum to TPP talks. And the TPP is not just an economic agreement, but an important pillar of the US rebalancing strategy towards Asia. And at the latest US-Japan summit meeting in Brisbane, Australia last month, President Obama and the Prime Minister Abe confirmed that they should make further efforts to conclude negotiations as early as possible. I hope that Democratic administration and the Republican Congress will be able to work together to authorize the coming agreement. Then along with the TPP negotiation, Japan-EU and US-EU agreements are also under discussion. Taking all of these free trade agreements, FTAs, into account, we stand poised to create a dynamic trading, investment, and exchange system amongst countries which share basic values such as democracy, human rights, and liberty and rule of law. And for its part, Japan will continue to accelerate efforts to swiftly conclude these negotiations. And now, in addition to security and economy, a third pillar is broad people-to-people exchange. And this is a key investment in the future of our alliance. Japan will send 6,000 students to the United States in fiscal year 2014, through student exchange programs such as the Kakehashi project, under which a total of 4,600 young Japanese and US citizens are expected to visit each other. In addition, the US government and US-Japan Council started the Tomodachi initiative following the March 11 Great East Japan earthquake. Through this program, more than 2,300 Japanese and American youth have participated in exchange programs with support from the private sector. And the academic exchange program also continue to bridge our nations. The US Fulbright program has benefited 10,000 Japanese and US students and scholars for more than 60 years. And Japan's Japan Exchange and Teaching program and JASTI, Japan-US Training Exchange programs, have expanded and strengthened people-to-people connections between our countries. About 30,000 US youth have participated in this JET program over its history of more than 25 years. And each year, through this program, my office alone dispatches between 45 to 65 college graduates from Ohio and Michigan who go to Japan to serve as both assistant English language teachers at public schools and as coordinators of international exchange at local government offices. Furthermore, Japan and the US now enjoy more than 400 sister city and sister state relations. As a symbol of a grassroots friendship that bonds our nations, the Friendship Blossoms initiative is currently overseeing the planting of 3,000 dogwood trees throughout Japan to reciprocate the city of Tokyo's gift of 3,000 cherry trees to Washington, D.C. in 1912, more than 100 years ago. Then now turning to Japan's great relations with Ohio, let me recap some of our recent activities. Over the past year, there's been a great deal of positive interactions between Japan and Ohio's state and the local government and economic development officials. The gift exchange of cherry trees and dogwood trees, by the way, is living legacies of Ohio's own Taft family. And we have maintained a close relationship with his family. And last month, both former Governor Taft and I attended the opening ceremony of Art Deco Japan, a special exhibit at the Dayton Art Institute. And in the early June, the Japanese Prime Minister's office dispatched a delegation to Columbus and Cincinnati, comprised of a female entrepreneur, a researcher, and college students. And this group was led by the former Japanese ambassador to DC, Mr. Fujisaki, and it was an inaugural mission of the so-called Walk in the US and Talk on Japan project. And meaningful grassroots level meetings were held in Dublin and Cincinnati with the strong support of the local Japan-American societies for the purpose of informing locals about the revival and changes underway in Japan now. Then in the mid-June, Governor Kasich and I co-hosted a reception at governor's residence in Columbus. And this first of its kind event was an expression of appreciation to the many Japanese businesses that have chosen to invest here. And I was truly heartened to see nearly 100 high-ranking Japanese and American executives of Japanese companies gather to engage in a productive and friendly dialogue with their state leader hosts. And I was also impressed by the governor's use of that opportunity as kind of town hall meetings to address problems facing the Japanese business community, rather than just using the time for entertainment. And this year also marks the 24th anniversary of the Ohio-Saitama sister state, sister prefecture relationship. And by the way, that Ohio now enjoys 14 sister city relations with Japan. And Cleveland itself has more than 20 sister cities, but none with the Japanese cities, unfortunately. And just 2 months ago, the governor of Saitama, Mr. Kiyoshi Ueda, and his delegation traveled to Ohio. And he enjoyed a full tour of the capital city with me and paid a courtesy call to his counterpart, Governor Kasich, before heading off to attend the 46th annual U.S. Midwest Japan Conference in Iowa. And this U.S. Midwest Japan Conference alternates between Japan and the U.S. each year and is one of the most active bilateral regional conferences of its kind. And this past September, it was held in Des Moines, Iowa, and was attended by nearly 300 top members of business, government, and academia from the US and Japan. And 9 Midwestern states were represented. And many constructive discussions were held under the theme, Building a Robust and Sustainable Future, with the goal of attracting more investment to the Midwest, including, of course, to the Buckeye State. And 6 US governors and 2 from Japan attended this year's meeting. If I may complain a bit, Governor Kasich has not yet joined this important annual gathering. And just for your reference, Governor Schneider of the state up north has participated for 4 consecutive years, including two Tokyo-based conferences. And I highly encourage my friends in Governor Kasich's office, Jobs Ohio Team Neo, and anyone interested in deepening economic ties with Japan to keep this key event on their schedule. And as you may know, Japan is the largest foreign investor in Ohio, accounting for about 30% of all international employment as of 2012 data. And according to our consulate office's study, there are now 425 Ohio-based Japanese companies, which directly provide more than 67,000 in-state jobs. And I would emphasize that 98% of these positions are held by local Americans. And I'm happy to report that the Japanese employers in Ohio have now surpassed the pre-recession employment numbers. And in fact, consulate data indicate that the total employment in 2013 is up 5% since the recession. And more great news was made last January when it was reported that Honda, whose US headquarters and factories are located in central Ohio, actually became a net exporter from the US with 108,705 vehicles exported last year. And this impressive achievement is a first of any Japanese automaker. And Honda will soon open its Heritage Center and new NSX sports car plant in Marysville. So considering some of the facts I've just shared, I'm quite proud of the significant contribution Japanese investment has brought to Ohio, its people and the economy. As Consul General, I've seen firsthand the growth of Japan's presence here, and I'm certain that with the continued cooperation of local residents and efforts of the Japanese business community, Japan will remain the #1 foreign investor in the state. And if we look at Northeast Ohio in particular, the numbers are also impressive. In Northeast Ohio alone, based on Team News 18 county region, there are now 89 Japanese facilities accounting for over 5,100 jobs. And 1,700 of these jobs are direct manufacturing positions. And what I find particularly interesting is the diversity of investors here, which I think reflects the region's dynamic economy. Whereas Japan's investment in Metro Detroit and the Central Columbus is heavily concentrated in the auto sector, Japanese companies in northeastern Ohio range in sectors from autos, steel, robotics, food, energy, and medical equipment sectors. And speaking of medical sectors, earlier I mentioned my friend Dr. Fujita. And Dr. Fujita is one of the few Japanese entrepreneurial success stories in the US. And he got his start right here in Cleveland in 1992 as a graduate student at Case Western Reserve University. And many of you may know about his company QED. And it's a medical equipment manufacturer he founded in 2006 after earning his doctorate in physics. And amongst many honors, Dr. Fujita was recently named one of the Smart 50 Award or Power Player in Cleveland winners in recognitions of QED's innovation, impact, and sustainable manufacturing. And most recently, he joined U.S. Commerce Secretary Penny Pritzker on the October trade mission to Asia, and also even a guest of President and First Lady Obama at the President's State of the Union address in January. And just as Cleveland gave Dr. Fujita the chance to achieve his American dream, he remains loyal to this community and reciprocates in many ways. I don't know if you have read his book titled Pathfinder, as it is written in Japanese language. What was impressive for me was his conviction that business needs a philosophy or ideal behind it and should not exist only for the purpose of making money. And after visiting here 11 times in total, I've learned that many business and other leaders in Cleveland with strong moral compasses have supported and maintained world-class institutions such as the Cleveland Orchestra, Museum, as well as this city club. And such leadership has made this town great. As Japanese investment has grown over the years, so too has the Japanese population. There are now nearly 13,000 Japanese nationals residing in Ohio. And this is a historic high. And in Northeast Ohio alone, there are over 1,200 Japanese. And from an investment standpoint, Japanese companies are attracted to this place for the same reasons as local companies: competitive business and tax climate, abundant and highly skilled workers to fill the jobs they create, and well-maintained and convenient transportation and logistics systems, a welcoming and proactive attitude toward outside investors. And as for Japanese residents themselves, they seek welcoming neighborhoods, affordable cost of living, and ample recreational opportunities, and good and safe schools, including the Saturday school option for their children in order to keep up with the Japanese studies. And I believe that Japanese investment is a great asset for developing cultural and educational ties in the region. And I'm delighted that Ohio schools have become big promoters of the study of the Japanese language. In the Buckeye State, there are now 26 universities, along with 16 K-12 schools with over 3,000 total students learning Japanese language. If I could leave you with one message today, however, it is that Japan's significant investment presence is not something to be taken for granted. To get this far together, great efforts and huge resources have been dedicated over several decades by both Japanese companies and Ohio's governmental economic leaders, as well as by local American citizens. Much work has been put into forging our economic and cultural ties. And it is a fact that the Japanese presence may not be as large in this corner of the state as it may be in central or southwest Ohio. In fact, there was a Japan-America Society established in Cleveland, I heard, as there are still very active chapters in Cincinnati and Columbus. And however, the Cleveland is regrettably no longer. Nonetheless, that you have a great base of Japanese companies here to retain and nurture. And nowadays, some may be enticed by new foreign investors who made headlines with attention-grabbing announcements. But I respectfully ask you not to forget about Japan. Though it may take a little bit longer time for the Japanese companies to make a decision, once it is made, I guarantee that they will do their best to keep the promise. And as Consul General, if I can work with you in any way, here in Cleveland, Northeast Ohio, or throughout this great state, I pledge my utmost efforts to advance our economic, academic, and cultural ties. And I would gladly visit again to work towards advancing our bilateral relations. And I welcome any of you who share this goal to visit me, should you ever be in the Detroit area. And I feel strongly that through such frequent dialogue and collaboration, Japan's long friendship with Ohio, and in particular the Cleveland area, will continue to grow. And by doing so, I trust that more and more Ohioans will understand that Japan and the Japanese are their true friend and reliable partners. Thank you very much. ありがとうございます。
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Dan Malthrop, Chief Executive here at the City Club. And today at the City Club of Cleveland, we are enjoying a Friday Forum as part of our Business Leaders Series. It's featuring Dr. Kazuyuki Katayama, Consul General of Japan in Detroit. We are about to begin our usual question and answer period, and we encourage you to formulate your questions for our speaker now and ask that your questions be brief and to the point. We welcome all of you here and those joining us via our primary media partner, 90.3 WCPN, WVIZ PBS, 104.9 WCLV Idea Stream, or one of the many other radio stations across the region and country that carry City Club programs. Television broadcasts of the City Club are made possible by Cleveland State University and PNC. Next Wednesday, December 10th, the City Club is pleased to welcome Dr. Margaret E. Raymond. She's the director of the Center for Research on Education Outcomes at Stanford University. She'll be unveiling the results of a new report on the performance of Ohio charter schools. Also next Friday, we welcome Reverend Dr. Otis Moss Jr. to discuss the unfinished business of race. For more information about either of those programs, any of our other upcoming programs, or our past forums, please join us online at cityclub.org. Today, we welcome sponsors of the Business Leaders Series, including Huntington Bank, Downtown Cleveland Alliance, Falls Communications, Humana, the Fredonia Group, Inside Business, Level 7, Life Bank, Meaden & Moore, and Walter and Haverfield. We also welcome guests at the table hosted by Forest City. We thank you all very much for your support. Today's forum is also the annual David Warshawski Memorial Forum, made possible by a generous grant from Florence Warshawski to the City Club Forum Foundation. We thank you very much for your support. We also welcome students to today's program from both Horizon Science Academy and Shaker Heights High School. Could the students please stand to be recognized? Student participation in City Club forums is made possible by a generous grant from the Mary Jane Spar and Charles E. Spar Charitable Trust. Thank you for your support. And now it's time to return to our speaker for our traditional City Club Q&A. We welcome questions from everyone, including guests. Holding our microphones today are our Director of Programming, Stephanie Jansky, and Marketing and Outreach Specialist, Kirsten Pianka. we have our first question, please?
Doctor, over here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for coming here to Cleveland to address us today. And today in your speech, you touched on the Chinese and Japanese relationships that are so important on the Western Pacific Rim. Oftentimes, we here in the United States read our media reports of protests over in China and the antagonism, both territorial and or economic, between Japan and China. Would you kindly tell us, from the standpoint of the diplomatic offices of Japan, what is the truth and where is the truth behind the Chinese Sino-Japanese relationship? Thank you.
Thank you very much for the very tough question. And I served 4 times in China, including the study at the university over there. And you can easily guess at how tough it was for the Japanese diplomat to work and live in China. But as I said, that Japan and China are neighbors who cannot escape each other. So the most realistic option is to create a win-win relationship, and to establish a mutually beneficial relationship based on common strategic interest. That is Japanese government's basic way. And recent years, mainly because of the so-called territorial issues, our bilateral relationship has been very negatively affected. Actually, from the Japanese position, we don't have any territorial issues because according to our position, historically, as well as in terms of international law, it's crystal clear that the Senkaku Islands belong to Japan. And in fact, that Japan implements effective control over the island, so that there is no territorial issues to be resolved with China over the Senkaku Island. That's the basic position of the Japanese government. But territory-related issue is the very sensitive issue. If you focus on this issue, I'm afraid there will be no exit. So both governments and people should look at the broader perspective of bilateral relationship instead of focusing on these issues. And as I said, that now China surpassing the United States in 2007 has become the largest trading partner for Japan. And we have more than around 25,000 Japanese companies which have invested in China market. And they have created, including direct and indirectly, 10 million jobs in China market. So economically, we are so closely interconnected. And then that in the area of economy, we can achieve a win-win situation. But unfortunately, we don't share basic values with China, such as democracy, human rights, rule of law, and liberty. And China provides a great opportunity to the rest of the world, including Japan, which is a neighbor, but also poses uncertainty about its future because their policy is not transparent. And as China achieves annually 10% economic growth, they're also increasing rapidly the military budget. For the last 10 years, China's military budget has been quadrupled, while the Japanese military budget is basically remains the same. And this is my personal opinion, but China has a very strong sense of humiliation by the Western powers, including Japan, since the end of the Opium War. Then that now as China rises, they have become more and more confident about their power and their future. So as China rises, it seems to be that their external behaviors have become more aggressive, more assertive. China is quite different from Japan. Japan is a small peripheral island countries. And we are very flexible to accept the foreign culture, foreign civilization, technologies. Then we adapted those foreign imported technology and thoughts so that it could adapt to the Japanese society. But China was the center of the East Asian civilization. So their mentality is quite different from Japanese. So they were always in the center of the civilization. So once China rises, the China tend to make the rest of the world abide by their standards rather than they abide by the internationally established standards created by the existing powers. So we are very closely watching how the rising China will accommodate with the neighboring countries and also the international communities. Still, I think that engagement policy remains the wisest policies to accommodate with China. But unfortunately, at this moment, we don't share the basic values with China. So in the security area, we need to hedge against uncertainty of China. But in the economic field, we need to create a win-win situation.
Just wanted to ask you, are you happy with the way our immigration policy is with Japan right now, or are there changes you would like to see made?
Thank you. Another tough question. Japanese immigration policy. This country is a country of immigration. So the diversity is the source of power of this country, and which I very much admire. And Japanese society is a highly homogeneous societies. And our social base is quite different from the United States. So I'm afraid Japan cannot complete the same immigration policies with the United States. But at the same time, now the Japanese population has started to decline. Now, Japanese fertility rate is 1.4. In order to sustain the current population, we need a 2.1, but now 1.4. So the Japanese population will continue to decline. For example, the United States fertility rate is 1.9, but you have a large number of immigration. So the United States, combined with the immigrants, I think United States is the only developed countries which steadily increase its population. So in order to maintain the Japanese economic progress, we need the manpower. And population itself is declining. And in addition to that, aging problem has become more and more serious. Now the 25% of the Japanese total population are more than 65 years old. And now we have more than 60,000 people who are over 100 years old. So of course, we need to encourage the aged people to be more actively involved in social activities. We need to create the measures to encourage more women to be actively involved in social activity, which the Prime Minister's current government is initiating. And then what kind of immigration policy the Japan should take? And this is a very difficult problems. And I don't think there is still a consensus among the Japanese people. Some people argue that we need to take a bold initiative to accept the immigrants. And this kind of diversity and increasing number of population will revitalize Japanese society again. But others argue that watching the situation in Europe or in some part of the United States, if we accept a large number of immigrants in the Japanese society, and that is a fear that they will create their own community in the societies, and then it could cause kind of social instability in the future society of Japan. So this is very difficult problem. And first of all, the Japanese people need to make a consensus about this problem. But I personally think that generally speaking, the diversity creates new values. So the diversity could stimulate your ideas. So I myself is for the active, immigration policy, but I don't know if my views is accepted by the majority of the Japanese people. But still, we are in the process of discussing these difficult issues, while that the population is continuing to decline.
Over here. You just answered most of my question, but I want to know what is your government doing about, what strategy does your government have to replace these Japanese people who aren't being reproduced?
This is not the issue that the government forced the people to do. What the government can do is just create the environments where the women can shine, women can easily have children. And so that first of all, that Japanese government is now encouraging the Japanese business sectors to create the maternity leave, more flexible maternity leave system, and system where that they can easily come back to the companies after raising children, and also that the facilities where that children were raised while that their parents go to work. And the government has set up a kind of numerical target for the women's ratio in the entire executive in the government sector as well as the private sector. That is 30%. So according to this target, in the last reshuffling of the cabinet, the prime minister appointed five or six women as a cabinet minister, among only a little bit more than 10 or 15 cabinet ministers. And, but even if such kind of measures become effective, but we cannot change drastically the current trend in a short period of time. So that now we have 128 million population. When I was a child, that I was told that the U.S. population is almost 2 times as big as Japanese population. Now U.S. population is almost 3 times as big as Japanese population. So that even if such kind of measures are introduced, we need to wait a little bit time for the effects to come out. So the government has targeted that will maintain our population to 100 million by the year 2050 or 2060 by introducing a series of drastic measures to encourage the people to have more children. but Japan is not a socialist communist country, so that it's up to the people, you know, to decide. And for example, my mother has 9 brothers and sisters. I have just 1 sister. And unfortunately, I have no children. So that I myself also has contributed to the decline of the Japanese people. But no way.
Today at the City Club, we've been enjoying a special Business Leaders Series forum featuring Dr. Kazuyuki Katayama, Consul General of Japan in Detroit. Thank you, Dr. Katayama, and thank you, ladies and gentlemen. The forum is now adjourned.